Obviously enough, it's Munster to dominate the back pages, given the dramatic nature, given the stage of the competition that it's come in, and given the romanticism, Peter, that surrounds Munster at this stage in European competition. It's quite the cocktail to be drinking in this time in the morning.
Yeah.
Or afternoon as it is now.
They never fail to disappoint, Richie. They're incredible. I think that was their 17th European quarter-final. I've probably been at most of them, but I was struck yesterday by the crowd, the atmosphere down there. It is like nowhere else in rugby.
Well, what was it yesterday? Because Van Grann mentioned this. I think Mick Galway had interviewed as well, that Oisin spoke to afterwards. Alan Quinlan obviously was on commentary for various TV outlets. What was it about yesterday?
Well, I was talking to a French journalist beforehand, and I was trying to explain to the French journalist that the fact that Toulon had won 49-0 against Clermont the previous week was actually to Munster's benefit, that it fed into their narrative, what they look for in these situations. So they're always up against the odds, or traditionally they were up against it. And yesterday, I think more than ever. I think what was interesting, we were talking about this earlier on, is that a guy from Bloemfontein, the coach, has tapped into it, probably with a bit of coaching by his predecessor, Rassi Erasmus, that he understands that you have to tap into the emotion of the province and the people. And the emotion, it was phenomenal yesterday. Maybe it's because where the press box is, we had these guys behind us, and they must have been in their 40s or 50s, and the extremes of anger, pride, joy, like the whole, it was fascinating. Just as a people watching exercise, you were distracted by them, because you're thinking Nigel Owens and Chris Ashton can't hear what you're saying. You know, you're saying it for the benefit of the guy sitting next to you, effectively. But the noise and the excitement, and then at the end the joy, it was overwhelming. And at the very end, Dennis Walsh mentions it in his piece. Van Grann walked into the middle of the pitch, and put his fist apparently on the centre spot, and held it there for 10 seconds, like he was trying to derive strength from the turf. I don't know what it was.
So he's almost went full Souness there. He's short on placing the flag in the centre circle.
I'm not going to be too cynical about that, because I do buy into the Munster magic, and I absolutely love watching them, and all year I've absolutely adored watching them. But I do think there's a huge amount of purposefulness around what Van Grann did this week. Talking about there's no heroes born in peacetime, and I've seen Warriors this week. When you're talking about looking at their injury list, when you're looking at Toulon with the huge win that they're coming in with the huge men that they are, like they are powerful team, and that was a big ask for Munster yesterday. So I think there was a bit of purposefulness from Van Grann, being like, I've heard this Munster thing works, I've felt it, and now I'm going to really buy into it and see if everyone comes with me. And will it make a difference? Will it be that 1 point difference? And who knows if that. And I heard from people who were there yesterday that they said that they had never felt Thomond like that before. So like, if Thomond can continually raise its game, that's quite a scary prospect.
It's odd and somewhat surprising that Munster are trying to essentially repeat the same trick twice that they had with Rassi Erasmus, and by that it was a tragic fluke, because obviously Anthony Foley was in charge of the team. Van Grann would have been in the kind of overseer of the operations, let's say, of the team, rather than the coaching. And he was thrust into this scenario where he has to be the standard bearer for a province that have just lost one of their all-time greats through the most tragic of circumstances. Guided them through that period amazingly. I don't think anybody could have asked somebody to do a better job, and he was helped along by a fantastic playing staff as well. He's taken away from them to go to the Springboks. They bring in another South African, and they're hoping that somehow this Munster magic, this frisson that has been left behind with Van Grann, will rub off with Erasmus, will rub off on Van Grann as well. And it seems to be, touch wood from their point of view, seems to be working, which just seems oddly fluky in a way. Like they're very, very lucky, or they've recruited exceptionally well here.
Yeah, well, they always talk, these teams talk about, researching their employees, their coaches as people as well as technicians. And he's still in his 30s. He's a young guy. The first press conference I was at where he was, it was actually after last week's game. He came in and he did the CJ Standard trick of shaking hands with all the journalists there. So
is that a disarming thing? Because you see it with
no, it's endearing. It's endearing, to be honest.
Well, that's what it means, in a sense that you kind of lose any sense of. There's no adversarial sense. going on there. You don't have to try and eke stuff out. You feel that it's more of a conversation going on rather than you're prodding for answers.
Yeah, it's impressive because you have these preconceptions about guys, the Afrikaner rugby players, that they are not necessarily kind of intuitive types, you know. And also you got to remember that English is his second language. Now he speaks it pretty well, but some of his imagery can be a bit clunky at times. But you cannot doubt his sincerity, and you can't but admire the fact that he's tapped in extremely quickly, as you say, Richie. He's tapped in so quickly to the whole Munster thing, and the fact that there is an emotional aspect to it. So he's well rated as a technician. And as somebody who can also get the best out of Munster lifers like Jerry Flannery and Felix Jones.
I think at the same time we shouldn't underestimate what's happening behind all of this kind of, you know, emotion and a little bit of bluster around that emotion, you know, around that talk about heroes and stuff. There's a huge amount of, like you said, technical work being done. You know, they're not just like leaving this up to a women a prayer, even though maybe yesterday there was a little bit of of that, but I think you can't underestimate that that's happening as well at the same time.
On that, given the injury list that they had, because they're shorn of pretty much half of an international team one way or another yesterday going into the game, and would have thought on paper, you look down through the two sets of teams, on paper it's not necessarily a mismatch, but you're kind of eking towards Toulon to win that game. For them to come through the injury list that they've had, the attritional nature of the Six Nations, which seems to have had a larger effect on them than any other province in the country, like, it's quite remarkable to see them come through in the way they did yesterday.
Yeah, it is a remarkable achievement. The only kind of smidgen of sympathy that I felt for Toulon was that, strangely, they actually got the better of the penalty count. They conceded 7 to Munster's 9, but you felt that most of the 50-50s went Munster's way. And I really, every time I see Nigel Owens these days, I'm a big fan. I think he's been good for the sport, and he's in some cases he's gone. You know, he's talked about stuff beyond the sport, like his sexuality, about mental health, all that sort of thing. At times, it's almost like his personality is too big for the game itself, and the last couple of minutes were nerve shredding. Conor Murray's off the pitch, and you're kind of fearful for Munster's safety, but you're also thinking there's no way Nigel's going to penalise them here. And they, you know, Toulon were within kicking range.
Was that the Thomond effect? The fact that they were surrounded by that?
Is there a sense that Nigel Owens kind of favours the Irish in a way?
No, he had a reputation as a hometowner, and Ireland suffered at his hands in Christchurch back in 2013, I think it was, and in the final minute where they lost a game that they should have won. But I mean, I can completely understand. I can understand why the emotion would affect, and like, they're all human beings. At the same time, he's a professional referee, and sometimes, you know, having spoken to video analysts who would analyse his games for the benefit of the players, they say at times there's no rhyme or reason, or there's no consistency with why he will give a decision technically. But the one common thread is that if it's coming towards the end of the game, the home team probably has a better chance of getting the decision. And I just thought that Munster did better out of Nigel than Toulon did yesterday. But in answer to your question, it was, even, you know, allowing for that, it was still a remarkable performance.
The worrying thing from now is they're off to France for the semi-finals. We're kind of seeing just in front of us play out who they're more than likely going to play at the moment. It would seem it's going to be Clermont, who are 9-0 up. That notion of going to, like, whatever about going to the team coming to Thomond and having to face that cauldron and the fervour that the Limerick fans produce there, it's that camel hump of going to France and trying to get over that and get a semi-final win over there. That's almost equally as difficult as someone coming to Thomond and trying to get a result. Yeah,
but it's part of that Munster narrative we were talking about, you know. The journalist I was sitting beside yesterday, he said Bordeaux 2000. He immediately thought of Bordeaux 2000, which was, you know, Munster beating Toulouse, and it was really, that was the starting point. It was the first time where you had a big crowd travelling, and you had all that sort of background stuff about how people got there, you know, and I'm talking about means of transport as well as their actual route, where they got their tickets. All that stuff is starting already online. You know, there's planning going on to make sure that even though the game is in France, Munster will have more supporters there than whoever it is, if it's Claremore.
I know people have booked tickets to Barcelona and planning trains, so there'll be trains booked after today and stuff. And I think that narrative is there with Munster in Europe, and as much as some of it can be a distraction, I think it'll be really welcomed by the coaching staff in Munster. Like, continue this, especially if the injury list continues to be as deep, and obviously Zebo probably should have come off even earlier yesterday, and you know, they will need a little bit of an extra something going to France. It can because when you do look at the team sheet, you know, it's a little bit scary. So I don't know, there is, and there's something special about Munster in Europe as well, and that can feed into matches.
The weird thing is they'll be insulated from it because they fly to South Africa tomorrow for 2 weeks. So this will all be going on at home, and they'll be actually protected from it. But by the same token, you'd imagine the coach actually wants them to to enjoy it and to derive something from it. But France is a very important part of the whole narrative, and it's you're immediately thinking there's another book in the offing here, you know?
And those big moments as well, like, you probably know more than me about that. Like, how much is having a big moment like that for Conway important going into the next game, and like how much you can build yourself up as a player, like that right, I've had this big moment now, and I can be a player that can win huge games for my team.
Bulletproof, absolutely. Confidence is huge, and it's built on those moments.